Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Bridging Literacy, to another live chat. I feel like it has been absolutely too long for me to go so long without doing a live. I feel like I'm a little bit rusty, and I have to be completely transparent with you guys. It was a little bit of a hot mess coming into doing this live. We have a little bit of different equipment, somewhat of a different setup, just because we have been really working at ripping up the carpet. Like now we have no carpet in this office. So I'm very excited to be doing it this way. I don't have a ton of stuff around me, which is really nice. So I'm not feeling claustrophobic like I used to. But you guys are like super far away from me. All right, so welcome. How are you guys doing? I feel like it has been such a long time. I see that Allison is watching me while in the pool. I feel like that is probably hands down the best place to watch a live chat. Really, really awesome. And I will cross my fingers that your son does not get your iPad wet. I would cry and scream and be really heartbroken. I see Leslie's in there. Congratulations on finishing school. So many of you are kind of wrapping things up for the school year. This is my last week for anything. Last week we had our final week of instruction. So that was kind of a mouthful. And now we are kind of doing a little bit of enrichment. So we've just gotten permissions to start doing some Zoom calls. So we've scheduled like our final morning meeting style Zoom phone calls with our kids this week, which will be really, really cool and exciting. But I'm also really nervous about it. I feel like as I haven't seen them in so long, I'm really nervous to get on a Zoom call with them. I feel like I'm just rusty. So yeah, hey guys. So good to see you all. I'm just kind of looking in. So many of you are in here. I'm excited about this one. So I have a live chat for you. This is going to be part 7 in our 10-part series for Bridging Literacy live chats, where I go over different instructional practices that fit really well. They blend really well with bridging literacy in general. So to kind of put all of these little pieces that I've been giving you, because that's kind of what I've been doing. I've been giving you pieces to the puzzle. In order to put them all together, I've been really working my tail feathers off on some different sessions through Bridging Literacy Community, where those members are going to get a really deep dive into how I kind of start putting all of these pieces together to make it the complete puzzle. So that's been very exciting. And if you are a Bridging Literacy member, I did put up session 2, so you can see session 2 within the community now. You can go ahead and start listening to it, watching it, however you choose, but all of the files are in there for you. So in this one, we are going to be chatting a little bit about conferences. And so I'm kind of nervous to go into this like whole new little setup. So here we go. I'm going to go ahead and get started with my slides. Let's cross my fingers I put it in the right spot. Yay, I did. So I mentioned to you that we're going to be talking about conferences. And one of the first things that I really, really want you guys to put into the chats, and I want to see your responses, is individual conferences. I'm not talking parent conferences. I'm talking about a teacher and a student having a conference together regarding their learning. I want to know, are you doing it? And if you're doing it, are you doing it for reading, writing, or are you doing it for both? So I want to see those in the comment. Let me know. Share that with me. I'm going to give it a little bit of time because I know it kind of has that whole lag piece going on there. And I'm just going to read some comments over here. Diana, it's so nice to be able to have you on here as well. Your first time ever. Oh my goodness. You are late in the game. But I am glad that you have gotten part of this one because we do have a really cool freebie for you. So that's going to be coming really soon. I know Trent's working on getting me the code for that. Let's see. Aaron, it's his birthday. Happy birthday, Aaron. Ooh, Lola, you're done on Wednesday. Friday, I think, is a half day for us. So I think we, like I said, we gave them some fun enrichment activities. So we have like a different activity every single day that the kids can work on. And then I have to have my report cards done by June the 2nd. So report cards, I'm going to start working on those this week, but I said I wasn't going to touch them until after Memorial Day. I just had a little bit too much other things going on. Okay, so Leslie says she does both of them for both ELA and writing. ESL with Rochelle says both. And then Chelsea, thank you for so much for being very open. You don't do them yet, but you're planning to once kind of the whole summer thing is over. Totally get it. Allison, again, thank you so much for being open. You don't do them. You try, but I'm sure there's always something that's kind of happening, right? You have either kids that are like constantly coming up to you, they're saying something, you're trying to respond to the kids, you're trying to have a conference, then little Tommy over there starts throwing a hissy fit or something happens and it's just all chaos starts to break loose, which I totally understand. I think what's going to end up happening is you'll find once we start talking about these conferences is that it definitely does take time. It definitely takes practice, and you kind of have to start getting yourself into the rhythm, and you have to hold yourself accountable to be able to make sure that you're doing them. And so that's the toughest piece, but I think the more and more you do them, the more I feel like you're gonna enjoy that so much more than actually doing your small groups. Now, I'm not telling you to not do your small groups. I'm just saying that you're gonna really like it so much that you're gonna prefer to do that instead of small group instruction. All right, so I'm not gonna hold off anymore. I feel like there's probably some other things that I should have said.
You want to give away the freebie?
Yes,
okay.
Freebie.
It's going to be part 7, one word. I'll type it in the box.
Part 7, with 7 as a numeral or 7 as a?
S-E-V-E-N.
Okay, part 7. PARTSEVEN. That is your code. If you go to theletteredclassroom.com, here's what I'm gonna be giving away for you. So we have an entire Conferring with Learners pack that you are going to get all of the resources that I'm going to end up sharing with you for free. So for those of you who are joining me live, you're going to get the conferencing pack completely free. So you can head over to theletteredclassroom.com, and then I want you to look for Conferring with Learners. So it's a conference guide, and it comes with a variety of different things, and I'll show them to you kind of randomly right now, but you're gonna get little tickets, you have calendars, you have a bunch of different recording pages that you're gonna get. So all of that is going to be free to you guys. You're welcome to go ahead and grab it now so that as I start to go through some of these items and I talk you through some of them, you can see it and you can look at it and kind of get an idea and maybe ask questions if you have questions, okay? Part 7, Trent's put it already inside of the chat so you guys can go and check that out. All right, here we go. I'm out of breath. I haven't done this in a while. I need to build stamina. So we're going to talk individual conferences, conferring with your students. And so we know that this idea of being able to provide one-on-one practice with students is really, really valuable, right? We know that it can really help us in general, and we know that we don't seem to have time. I think that's always the biggest struggle with every teacher, is that we have so many different things that we want to be able to accomplish in a day, that when it comes down to individual conferences, those always get pushed to the back burner because you have so many other things that you're working on, that you're doing. And there also comes the whole thing with the behaviors, right? Behaviors start to end up you have little fires all day long that you're trying to put out. So I'm going to be sharing some different tips as we go along throughout this entire session. But if you have questions on anything with conferences or conferring, I want you to go ahead and drop them inside of the chat. So as you're starting to think of things, put them in the chat. Trent will try to look out for it as much as possible so that I can respond to you guys and give you some answers. All right, so here we go. Let's get into the benefits. Benefits of conferring. What are the benefits, and specifically, what are the benefits of conferring? We all kind of in general know that it's a good thing, right? We know that it's a good idea to have conferences with our students. We are told this, and so we just believe it. But what does it really do for us as teachers, and what does it do for our students to be able to sit down one-on-one with them and like have a conference with them regarding their academic pieces. So one, I think this is the biggest one, is that it really helps you to get to know your students more. And my favorite time to sit down and have conferences is the very beginning of the year. Guys, I swear my kids crack me up so much. I would sit down and I would have a conference with kids, and you would have everything from the extreme of, okay, to the, oh yeah, I was watching, Five Nights at Freddy the other night, and my dad and I, we like to play the video games, and there was this really new video game that I really enjoyed, and so we started playing that video game, and then we ended up getting a piece of pizza, and we usually try the pizza down the street, but actually we went to the pizza about 2 miles away, and that pizza was actually a lot better, and so I told Dad that now we have to have that pizza. You have those two extremes from having conferences with your kids at the beginning of the year. But Lord have mercy, let me tell you guys, it is the best thing to sit down with your kids at the beginning of the year and just have little conferences, getting to know them. What do you like? What are some things that you like? Just tell me, what do you like? I don't really want to go into specifics about your book. I don't want to talk about what you're writing. I don't want to talk about anything. What do you like? What do you enjoy? And for the kids who don't really like to say much, start the conversation for them. So here's what I would do. If I would get the, I don't know, I would say, well, you know what? I really like pepperoni pizza. Pepperoni pizza is my favorite type of pizza, but I actually can't have pepperoni pizza because I'm gluten-free now. And the more you start to share and you start to ask those questions about different foods that you like, or movies that you like, or music, or games, whatever it is, the more you're gonna be able to pull out of your students. And so it's always so interesting to kind of see that piece take place. I don't know, it's my favorite. But that's the thing with conferring. You get to know your students, and you get to know the ones who are really, really quiet and who sometimes get they kind of get pushed to the side with those kids who have such a vibrant personality. And I was that kid that did not have the vibrant personality, and I would just kind of sit there and not say anything. So for those kids who just sit there, you have that ability to be able to get to know them a little bit more. The other thing is it starts to really build relationships. The more you spend one-on-one with your students, the better your relationship is going to be. The better it's going to end up feeling to your student to be able to feel comfortable when they talk to you. The more likely they're going to want to tell you things more often. But you build that relationship because they feel that you care and that you want to know more about them, and that you want to know how they're doing and how they're feeling and what's working and what's not working, and you want to help move them past all of those different pieces. So it really does help to build those relationships. It also really helps to hold your students accountable. This is a big one. When I tell my students, listen, so I'm going to let you do this, and you're going to do it for the next, 3 or 4 days. And then on 3 or 4 days, I'm going to come back and I am going to check to see if you've done it. And the first time that you do it, if the child is not someone who is like super Johnny on the spot and they get all of their things done, but if they're not that kid, they will not have it finished. But when they realize that every time you're going to come back and you are checking up on them, they're going to start to do it more often. You have to hold yourself accountable though. So you can't tell them, I'm going to come back and check on you in 3 or 4 days, and then 5, 6 days go by and you're like, oh my gosh, I forgot to go check on Johnny. You can't do that. You have to hold yourself accountable, and then they will start to hold themselves accountable. Kids need someone to be able to model after. So if you're showing them that it's okay to forget or to leave things off or to not get in touch with them, guess what's going to happen? They are going to think it's okay to forget, to think that it's never going to happen, and to not do it. So you have to play your part in order for them to start kind of showing that in the classroom. It's a really, really big one. They need a role model, and so you have to be that role model for them. And then the last thing it really does is it helps to build autonomy. I love to talk about autonomy, probably just as much as I like to talk about just ELA and bridging literacy in general. And autonomy, the idea behind autonomy is that Kids have the need, the desire to learn, and so they are motivated to do things on themselves. They are motivated to say, okay, here is where I am, here's where I need to go, now here's how I'm going to get myself there. So when we build autonomy, you're working on that accountability piece. You're working on them saying, oh, okay, here's how I need to just be a better learner. But the more you kind of help guide them through that, with individual conferences, the better they are going to get at it. Now, obviously, I wish that we could have every single teacher all through every single year that kids are with us do this, because if we were to see that every teacher did this from grades K through 12, you would see a drastic difference in how kids do it. And so I have a little bit of a better position because I have kids for 3 years. I'm able to see that what I'm doing truly does work because I see it carry over year after year after year, and I see how motivated my students are, and I see how much they are changing. And so while some of them may not still be as motivated as I would like for them to be, they are a lot better off than where they were at the very beginning of the year. So we know it does great things, right? We do. But here's the thing. When and how? When are we going to get it done? And for how long are we going to have to get this done? That is like the $1 million question I am sure every single one of you is probably asking. And here's the thing. You have to get creative as a teacher. You have to get creative with your schedule, all right? And so here's how my schedule is interpreted when it comes to the time and when I'm able to do it. Because of Bridging Literacy, because of the method that I'm implementing with Bridging Literacy, I have 30 minutes at the end of my ELA block, and I have an hour and 20 minutes ELA block, but I have 30 minutes every single ELA block that I can commit to giving individual conferences. Now, I kind of split it up a little bit because I also pull a fluency group with that. So I might have a fluency group and then I might have about 15 minutes of doing individual conferences. But I am able to do individual conferences every single day, and it's because of what Bridging Literacy has been able to do with my instruction. Because I have taken out that whole, I'm going to just duplicate what I've taught you in reading for writing, and I've taken away the too many lessons. So because I've taken away that many lessons, I now have so much more time to be able to spend with my students conferring. And so not only does Bridging Literacy give me that time, guys, but it really does work. It really does help kids understand the expectation and the purpose of their writing, which is where I think we always fall a little bit short, is that we don't really define that purpose. Yeah, we talk about audience and we talk about kind of who are you trying to reach, but the purpose of, but why am I talking about character traits? But why am I going so in depth with my description of setting? But why am I really focusing on plot here? When we understand that why, which is your reading builds to that why, then kids have a better, bigger purpose of, oh, now I know what I'm doing, and now I know why I'm doing it. So putting the two together, combining them together with this Bridging Literacy model has hands down done wonders for me. All right, I'm gonna get off my soapbox when it comes to Bridging Literacy. So here's what I want you to think about it. Your conferences, if you don't have that 15 to 30 minute block like I do at the end of my ELA time, I want to ask you, well, what are your kids doing for morning times? What are your kids doing at the end of the day? When can you pull, like, do you have some sort of a win period, or do you have some sort of a content time where your kids are working independently, where you're able to kind of pull them back? Here's the thing. If you're sitting here saying that, well, I can't leave my kids by themselves, like I want to be floating around and kind of seeing what my kids are doing while they're working independently. Here's the thing. You're not building independence in your students. You're building them to become watchers, because then they're just sitting there and they're watching you because you're watching them. in order to build the independence, you have to let them go free. You have to leave them and let them go. And if things start to kind of unravel and it starts to get really, really chaotic, you pull them back. And you say, guys, we need to stop, put your things down, come back to the meeting, and we need to have a discussion about what is happening right now. And do it every single time. I swear to you, you're going to get moans and groans. They're going to say, oh, Billy, why'd you do that? They're going to be cussing each other out. Well, hopefully not cussing each other out. That's not right. That's not polite. But they're going to be really irritated with one another if you're constantly bringing them back to the carpet because somebody's not doing what they're supposed to be doing. So I promise you, if you're sitting there saying, well, I can't take away from their independent times because I'm usually walking around, I challenge you to do 1 or 2 conferences. That's all I'm asking, 1 or 2 conferences during their independent time where you can pull them and you can just have that discussion. So that's going to kind of be me saying me on my soapbox. Was that the second time I've been on my soapbox? I think that's the second time. See how many times. We'll do a countdown. Or count up. I don't know. All right, so we're moving on. Your conferences. So that's your win, okay? I chose to do it my way because of what Bridging Literacy has offered to me to be able to do it during that last block. You can also split it up if you have to split it up. So if you need to do 1 or 2 in the morning, then do 1 or 2 in the afternoon, that's fine. And here's the thing, it doesn't have to be in your ELA block. Don't think outside of your ELA block. If you're like, well, I don't really have that much time in ELA, that's fine. Find somewhere else in your day when you can pull it. It's a conference. It's a reading conference. And when you start to kind of pull different content areas from different times and moving them in different places, kids start to see the connections and they need to see those connections. They shouldn't think, oh, this is reading time. I'm only going to do reading. I remember when I first started kind of moving things and kind of pulling things and saying, hey, we're going to read this social studies article or we're going to read this science article and in reading class, they're like, but wait, this isn't content time. And I'm like, yeah, I know, because it's all over. It's all combined. You're going to read in content. You're going to read in math. It's all one big jumbled mess. But we teach everything so isolated that we don't help kids start to see some of those connections. So that is incredibly important. Are you watching the chat a little bit?
Question D, I had one.
I need a drink.
How long should I confer with a group of students at a time? And is this all happening in the classroom? Is this done during classroom time?
Yes, it is definitely done during classroom time. You would want your students in order to be able to work with them. And for the time, I'm about to get there. So think creative when it comes to when you're able to pull your students, okay? Remember, it does not have to be during ELA time. As far as how long you pull them for, one individual conference, so a conference between you and another student, should last no more than 5 minutes. In fact, I push to say 5 minutes is a little bit too long. I like to keep things with my magic 3. 3 minutes, that's all I like to keep it at. So I prefer to keep it at those 3 minutes. I feel like that's a perfect sweet spot. Now, granted, when you first start to do these, you will take a little bit longer because the kids are not used to it and you're not used to it. So it takes you a little bit to get into your mojo. It's kind of like the beginning of the year, guys, when we're starting to learn some of those routines. Everything takes us forever. It's the same idea. It's a new routine. It's the way you need to think about it. It's going to take you just a little bit longer to get used to it. So, yeah, so no more than 3 minutes. And if you could possibly do about 3 or 4 students in a day, I think that's incredibly ideal and realistic for everyone. So let's talk, types of conferences. Did you know that there are more than one type of individual conference? Did you know that? Somebody said they have 4 more weeks of distance learning, and I am so sorry. Michelle's in the same boat. I swear I think hers is 5 weeks.
And the parents.
What?
That's the ending. And the parents.
Oh man, I'm so sorry. That's horrible.
We are laughing with you.
I am very much trying to laugh with you. All right, here we go. So I did see a question on here. Rachel says confer once a week with students. Yes. I think once a week is incredibly ideal. I have probably a handful of students that I would probably do twice a week, but those are typically my lower students that I really want to provide more support with. So I typically try to do them twice a week, but once a week is perfectly fine. I think that is incredibly acceptable. I feel as though if you try to start doing way more when it comes to conferences, like if you say, man, I'm going to do two kids a week. If you start too high, you have your expectations set too high, you're going to end up setting yourself up for failure. So don't do that. And we'll get into some tips a little bit later on as well. Okay. So let's get into types of conferences. There are 3 types of conferences in ELA, not like math conference, not any of that. I'm only talking ELA, but there are 3 types of conferences that you can end up holding, okay? And I think I'm thinking right now. I'm so sorry that I am randomly stopping and thinking. All right, so I think what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna go ahead and, oh, it worked. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and share this part with you. So if you are just starting to chime in, I have a free resource for you guys today. And the resource is a Conferring with Learners. And it's a conference guide that kind of has all the little bits and pieces that you might want to be able to start implementing conferences or to refine your conferences a little bit more when it comes to literacy instruction, okay? So, here's what I have for you guys, okay? One of the first things that I do with my students is I will keep a binder. Unfortunately, I don't have the binder here. It's shut down. What? What happened? Okay. But I normally have everything in a binder. I obviously don't have a binder, so I can't show that because it's locked down inside of our building. But typically I would have a calendar, and this is exactly the calendar that you're going to get, the resource that you're going to get. And so I would, on every single day, I would tell myself, okay, who is it that I'm going to be able to confer with this week? So then I might say, all right, this is actually no school. And then I might say that I want to confer with Tommy, Sam, and Jill. All right. I might say that those are the 3 students that I'm going to confer with. I would write their names down on the day that I want to confer with them. Now, this is in advance. Typically, I would try to do it by the week, just so that I can be prepared. And if I have to move somebody, I have an erasable pen. I could just erase their names and move it. It's so simple. But I would simply have their names written out for the week so that they can see. So I have a good idea of who I want to meet with, okay? So that holds myself accountable, and I know exactly who it is that I want to meet with. Typically, I just kind of go through the rotation. I want to make sure that I have everybody pretty much down for the week. So if you have 25 kids, you're obviously going to do 5 kids, in a day. Or if you have less than that, it's great. Then you're going to get to do less in a day. So I'm normally able to fit in about 4 or 5 students within one day, which makes it pretty easy for me. Okay. So you have a calendar and you keep your calendar on the very, very front. Okay, so here's where my front of my binder would be. So then that way I can check to see who it is that I want to be able to meet with. When I go to meet with that student, when I go to set up and say, here's who I'm going to be meeting with, in the morning, before students ever show up, I'm going to take a ticket. It's a golden ticket. It's not golden on Astra Bright's paper, although it doesn't look very bright on your screen at the moment. But I'm going to take a ticket. There are 3 different types. You can use this one, and I would have them laminated, and I would just use like a what are they called? A vis-a-vis, like one of those wet markers. And I would just write a time if I wanted to put a time here. Or if you have materials that you want them to bring, you can just give them this and they can put the materials that you want. I could do it in a Sharpie or whatever it is and have it sitting on their desk. Or there's just a plain one that you have here. You could just, again, have it out on their desk. So that way it kind of signals to them when they come in, oh, I have a conference today. I'm going to be meeting with Miss Spackman at some point or another. Fantastic. So now they know that they have a conference. On the days that they have conferences, I will tell my students, you need to come with a question. I want you to come prepared to ask me something, okay? Anything that pertains to ELA. So I would have these little cards. Let me actually move some of this so that you guys can see it. So I would have these cards like this. There's an ask the teacher and then a leading question. And then students, I would just have a little basket of them. They can go and grab one and all they would do is say, you know, I am searching for a new book. Okay? And then this can be from Jill. And so Jill would have this turned into me. At any point in the day before her conference, she can go and turn it into me. And then that way I know what she's going to ask before we ever sit down. And then I can prepare myself. So if she's saying that she needs a book and I'm like, okay, so Jill really likes fantasy books. I know that she's already read, you know, the Gregor series and she really, really loves that. She digs it. I think I'm going to go ahead and see if she wants to try out this other series. And so I might bring it to the conference when I go to sit down with her and chat, okay? So they would have that, they would turn that in. And so here's what would happen. When I go to have my conference, like I said, there are 3 different types of conferences that I would have. And at the very beginning of the year, the very first conference that I do, and it's super low key and it's not much that I do with as far as like where I log all the information, is I sit down and I ask my students, what do you like? Just tell me things that interest you, all right? And so that kind of builds them and gets them comfortable. And then for my next conference, I'm gonna do an informal reading conference. And so that's what this one will look like. Here's this sheet. And this is an informal reading conference sheet. And so basically, I kind of go through and I ask the questions of what's on this form. So I would say, show me a book that you can read pretty well. So we've been reading for a few weeks at this point, and now I'm starting to kind of pull in conferences, okay? I would probably do the what interests you within the first or second full week of school. This might be like, you know, after the first month. All right, just to kind of get used to kids. Like I said, it takes a while to get through the first conference. So then I might write down the title of the book. I would write down the genre. I would write down her page, how many she's read, and then when did they start that book, okay? And then I would say, well, why did you choose this book? And as I'm talking, I wouldn't sit there and ask all these things. I'm quickly kind of writing it down. And so as she's sitting here, well, I chose this book because, you know, I really liked the cover. Well, what about the cover interested you? And so I might write down what interested her on that cover. Why? Because the next time she gets stuck on selecting a book, I can very easily say, well, oh, I remember that she really liked this thing that was on the cover. And so now I want to go and find some books that has that on there so that that might interest her as well. Okay, so once I did that, then I would say, what reading level is this book for you? Do you think like it's a really hard book for you to read sometimes? Do you think it's pretty easy, or do you think it's just right? And then I would just simply do an X. Okay, that's all I would end up doing. And then I would say, well, why don't you tell me a little bit about the book so far, okay? Like, I just want kind of the gist. Just let me know what's happening so far. And so as they're doing it, I'm kind of writing little notes. And I say, oh my gosh, that sounds so cool. It's fascinating. I don't think I've ever read this book, so I might have to put this one on my list. And then I would say, now I want you to go ahead, and since we're on this page, why don't you read this part for me, okay? So I'm just going to listen to you read. I want to get a feel for you as a reader and see what I can really help you work on this year. And so they're going to read. And so I might say, oh, they need some help with phrasing. They need some help with expression. Those are some of the pieces. And if there's some challenging vocabulary, I might write the challenging vocabulary there. Okay? Question.
Do you do this on your iPad or handwrite all of it? And how long are the conferences? Oh, 3 to 5 minutes.
Yes, 3 to 5 minutes for the conferences. These will take a little bit longer. In the very beginning, it always takes a little bit longer. Kids start to learn you and they start to figure out what you're going to say before you even say it. So, but the first time, it's going to take you a while. It's going to end up taking you about 2 weeks to get through your whole class. I mean, I'm just going to be honest with you. It takes forever, even though you're not doing like full-blown like some schools are maybe not doing full-blown hardcore instruction. It takes me about 2 weeks to get through the first conference, like the what interests you, and then it takes me another 2 weeks to get through these. So it'll take you a while. And I just put it all in a binder. I have it all copied. I handwrite it. It's so much easier for me. I think it's too much for me to put on my iPad, and I like just having little dividers for each of my kids so that I can just go to them and kind of see all of their conference forms, and then I can always pull it out for parent-teacher conferences if I feel like I have to. So then I would go through, so now that you read that part, I want you to tell me a little bit about what you read. I want to see if you can remember what you read. So then I would kind of write that in. I could write down strengths, goals, and then I would just say, how long do you think it's going to end up taking you? Are they going to say 2 weeks, 1 week, a day? Write it down. All right. And then I would put this off to the back burner. So this is an informal reading conference. This is the type of conference that I feel like you don't really have a certain objective. You just want to get to know them as readers. You want to see what they're doing as a reader. You want to just kind of listen to them. That's what this type of conference is for. So you have one for reading, and then you also have an informal writing conference. So this is the second type. So you have your informal writing conference where you're going to go through the same type of process, but you're going to ask them about certain pieces of writing. Now, obviously, you can't do this one until you kind of get into writing a little bit more and you have your kids' independent writing so that you can kind of start to see what it is that they're doing. But you would ask them the questions. What is your writing about? How and why did you choose this story or topic as what you wanted to write about? Which part of this writing is your favorite? And then going through the strengths and teaching points and goals. So that's kind of the general idea of informal. It's when you don't really have something specific that you want to do with that student. All right. So 1 and 2. The third type of conference is going to be your more strategic conference. So this is one where, let's say, I noticed that Jill is doing something very particular, like specific in group. And I started also noticing that she's doing it independently. So when I meet with her, I might give her a ticket, and then I might end up on her ticket with like a vis-a-vis because it's laminated. I might say, bring this or whatever it is that I want her to bring specifically. And then I would give it to her. When I sit down with her, I kind of would have some of this already set out. So the purpose, I might say, I like to do like very independent activities sometimes. I will randomly do little task cards with my students because I think those are pretty simple ones and it's really nice for me to give them immediate feedback. So I have like this really good setting task card that my kids were working on, but you had to really infer the setting. So they would kind of give you little hints, little bits and pieces. So I might say for this purpose here, I'm going to say inferring setting. And I may write out a little bit more, I may not, okay? My compliment, I'm going to go ahead and say that, when she was in group, she was very engaged in the conversation. And she had some good thoughts about the characters. But as kind of we were talking about setting, something I noticed is that she's struggling with making inferences when it comes to her setting. So she needs help to make those inferences. So I would write down something in regards to like her inferences. It's not the best color that I'm using, is kind of what I'm starting to notice over here. Sorry guys. And so as I'm doing that, I might have a very specific teaching point that I'm going to give her. And I'm going to say, look, listen to me as I go through this task card. Here's kind of what I'm picking up on, and I'm highlighting certain parts. Now I want you to go and try and do it right here in front of me. So then she starts doing it right there in front of me. And then I would give her either some redirection if she needs it, or I would provide her with more compliments. And then we would set up a goal together. And I'm going to say, you know what, Jill? I think you need to practice a little bit more when it comes to inferring some setting. So I'm going to, over the next 3 days, so we're going to say it's going to be about 3 days, I want you to complete 10 setting cards. All right, 10 setting cards. You could do it here, you could do it at home, you could do it for morning work, but I want to have those 10 setting cards completed, and I want you to have that turned into me before we meet again on Friday, okay? And so she automatically knows what's happening. And then here's the trick. I'm gonna say, okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and sign this, and this is gonna tell me that you're gonna do it. So Jill, go ahead, honey, and I want you to sign right here, because that tells me that you're gonna stick to this goal. Right? We're going to stick to this goal. You're going to do it and we're going to move on. Her signing that makes her feel like she's written a contract. So now she is set on really making sure that she gets those setting cards totally done, because she has signed her name onto our conference form, and she knows that the next time that we come back, we're going to be checking over those 10 cards together. So it's a really simple trick, but it's one that I have found really does work, and the kids really like to sign their name. They think it's just super snazzy. Sorry that it went out blurry on you guys. I apologize for that.
2 questions. When in the school year you start your conferences, and where do you get your task cards? Specifically, she has to get them on Teachers Pay Teachers.
So the task cards are kind of a variety. I have quite a few of them from Lakeshore that I use just because I like the durability of them. I also have some that I have made for myself, where all I've literally done is I created a table in like PowerPoint, and like it's just a table with a bunch of numbers, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 or whatever. And I copy pages from books. So I will just copy the page and I'll put 1 and I'll circle it at the top, and that becomes a task card. So it's kind of a bootleg task card, but it's a task card. So it really kind of depends. Some I have purchased from the past. Some of them I have just bootlegged made, and then some of them I've bought from like companies like Lakeshore. So if I have any, I will try to shout them out if I can think of any of them, but I can't think of any of them off the top of my head. Sorry. The other question about when do I start? Usually the first full week or the second full week of school is typically when I start with the what interests you. That's all I ask. And that typically takes me about 2 weeks to get through. All right. So that's the third type of conference. Okay. So like I said, we have 3 different types of conferences that you'll have with your students. You will have your informal conference for reading, you have an informal writing, and then you have a very strategic conference, which this conference form for this strategic conference, it can go towards reading or writing. So if my purpose was to discuss, writing show versus tell sentences, I would put that purpose there. If my compliment was something that I noticed in their writing, I would put it here. Then I would give them a teaching point, and then I would have them go through and practice and maybe say, hey, let me check your writing again after a week, and I want to see if you've made those changes. So this conference form works for both of them, which is really nice. You guys know me. Graphic organizers, I like them to work for both. So do I. I like the same thing with forms. They need to work for both, because that just makes my life so much easier when it comes to that. The informal conference forms, those were a little bit harder. But overall, I like how that works. Okay. You guys feeling good? Are you happy that you're getting this resource? Because I'm happy that you're getting this resource. Okay, here we go. So, the other thing that I have is that as you are kind of going through your day, your week, whatever it is, your week, is what I meant to say, you also have something like this that you're tracking. And this is from my observations, okay? And so you have this in there as well. And so I have one for reading, one for writing. And what this allows me to do is just kind of track and kind of see what my kids are doing. And so as we're filling one of these out, or if I'm doing an informal one, if I did an informal one, this would be a little bit more personal to me versus to the student. So I may not necessarily have the student see all of this as I'm writing it out, or I might finish writing it out when I go back to my table and I'm reviewing their informal conference. But I might say like has capital letters. Is this writing? It does. So capital letters, I might write punctuation, show versus tell. What are some other really good writing pieces? Organization. I'm thinking off the top of my head here, guys. Organization, and then I might say a small moment. And I would have one of these for all of my kids. If these are the focus things that I really want my students to have within a certain genre, I would have them put those down. And so as I finish up a conference form, I might say, okay, this student did great with capital letters. I'm going to give them a plus. Punctuation, oh, we still need to work on commas and quotation marks. So I'm going to give them a minus because we just did not have that down whatsoever. Show versus tell, kind of sort of, like I felt like they did half and half. So I'm going to do a plus with a slash and a minus. And then organization did great. Small moment did great. Okay, so you can use any of these forms. If you prefer something like this as your informal conference, you can definitely do this if you feel like you kind of have the guidance to be able to do it by yourself versus having everything spelled out for you like I did in this one. So I think these are two really good variations for informal conferences. So I would say either use this or this, one of the two, okay? Just makes it easier on your life. Or if you want to start with this and then transition to this once you start to get your groove down, definitely do that. I think it is so much easier to kind of navigate this piece, and you're able to kind of see and look at multiple pieces of writing because maybe they did really great here, but they didn't do so great here. So then you would say, hey, what happened? We did really well, and now look at where we've gone. Why did you stop doing that? So you can bring that up and have that as a conversation with your students. So all of these resources are going to be available for you guys. I feel as though I haven't talked in forever this much, and I'm losing my voice. I can already sense it. Do you sense it? I do. All right, so now I think...
Would you put a reading skill in the writing checklist, like uses figurative language?
I consider that a writing. So I consider it both, to be honest, because they need to be able to interpret figurative language, which is a reading skill, but they also need to be able to utilize figurative language as a writing skill, and that's just simply an author's craft piece to being able to add that writer's voice. So it can really go hand in hand. But to say that, like, what would be like a reading skill? So to say something about like identifies characters, you wouldn't necessarily say identifies characters. I think you would say more as defines characters in their writing, or introduces characters is what I meant to say. So either introduces characters or orients the readers to the story. Those are kind of more of the writer's craft versus the reading piece.
How often do you do follow-ups?
So I have like a group of students that I would say that I meet with twice a week just because they need a little bit more guidance and they need me to check back up on them. But normally I only meet with students once a week. I have a handful that I will meet twice with, and then I do it every week. I may end up giving myself a break in there 1 week out of the month, but that's really about it. Okay. So, the next thing, sorry guys, you thought you were almost done with me. You're not. So the next thing is to talk about tips. So I mentioned that I was going to share a little bit about some tips as far as what's really going to help you to feel as though you can handle doing conferences. So the first tip is to start small. Don't give yourself a huge goal of, okay, Bridget said she does them once, with every student once a week. That's what I'm going to do. No. Start small. And I would first say, you know what? I'm going to meet with every kid this month. Okay, so for the first month of school, I'm going to meet with every kid. Perfect. That is a small goal. And then maybe next month, you're going to move that to, instead of one for every kid once for the month, to every student within 2 weeks. So I'm going to meet with them twice in the month. Okay, you start small so that you can grow it. The moment you say that I'm going to try to meet with everybody and you announce that to your entire class and you don't follow through with it, they're going to know that whatever you say may not actually happen. And so you lose that accountability, and so they don't feel as though they have to stick to it the way that you told them to. So start small. The other thing is to come prepared, okay? And this means that you need to come prepared with your forms. This is why I would prefer to have everything inside of a binder. This is why I hand out these tickets, because it holds me accountable. I have the ticket on their desk. I make sure that they know exactly what they're supposed to be doing. And I always have extra copies inside of my binder. And so I'm ready to go to sit down and start having a conversation with my students. So always have all of your materials prepared. I really encourage you to just have a binder with all of your stuff right inside of that binder. They have really cool like zipper pouches that you can stick things inside of. I would put these in there. I would put a pen, a highlighter, anything that you might need. I would put it right inside of that binder. I even put a couple of pointers in there for some of my students who need a little bit more guidance whenever they are reading. The other thing that I would tell you to do is to determine your purpose in advance. So like I said, for the very first conference you do with your students, just ask them what interests you, okay? The second conference, you're going to do an informal conference. I recommend that you start off with the one that's scripted, and then after that, if you want to do another informal conference, you can move to more of the checklist style, okay? Once you have that, you're going to start picking up what students really need instruction on, okay? As you're starting to make your observations, you're taking grades, all of those pieces, then you're going to start to have more purposeful lessons. So if I have a more strategic lesson, then I'm going to make sure that this form is filled out all the way to the teaching point, okay? So I'm going to provide them with that, all of the instruction. I'm going to take my notes, which is not a ton on here. Once I filled out my part, there's not a lot for me to kind of give them to fill out right in front of them. So we're pretty much done at that point. When you come prepared with what exactly that you want to talk about with your students, it doesn't have that awkwardness of, okay, so what do you like? Crickets. What are you reading? Crickets. Bring something to talk about. So if you're going to talk about something that you're reading, have your book. Hey, I brought my book that I've been reading recently and I wanted to show this to you because I think it's really cool. What do you think about that? You kind of have to help break the ice a little bit because they don't really want to talk to you. They think it's weird. They think they're in trouble that you're sitting one-on-one. And so you have to kind of open up to that and you have to start having those conversations with them. The last thing that I would tell you to do is to set a timer, okay? I know that's weird. I have to be honest, I don't really like timers, but I like my Apple Watch, even though it's summertime and I don't typically wear my Apple Watch a ton during the summer, but that's okay because I'm not teaching. Well, I am, but you guys understand right now. You know what I'm talking about. So normally I have my Apple Watch, and I will just set a timer on my Apple Watch so it buzzes on my wrist versus it actually going off, because I don't want kids to think that the timer stops and I'm done talking with them. I don't want to set that expectation for them. So it's more of a reminder for me instead of a signal to stop the conversation. It's just like all right, you got to start wrapping it up. You talk too much type situation. So set a timer somewhere quietly, if you can put it underneath your leg wherever you're sitting, so that you can maybe have it buzz, and then you can just turn it off, very discreetly, and continue and finish up the conversation if you have to. But hopefully all of the resources, all of the tips have really hopefully helped give you a better idea of how you can start to implement individual conferences into your classroom and hopefully make them feel successful for the most part. So now,
do the students keep the conference sheet with their goal sheet?
So no, typically I will keep all of these forms here. As far as their goal sheets, we would have their folder is typically what they would bring. It's what I would call my data binder, but it's not a binder, it's a folder, because I don't have the space for all of those kids for a binder. But they would have their folder with them, and so they would write down their goal on that on inside of that folder to be able to track it themselves, because the binder for me is kept separate so that I have the ability to just flip through all of my students fairly easily. I can't do that with all of those binders. It's just too much for me to try to say, okay, well, what does this kid need? What does this kid need? So I keep these forms in my personal binder, and then when they come to me, they'll come to me with their data folder. That's what I should call it. Data folder. They'll come to me with that data folder and fill in their goal. Okay. So if you are interested, after seeing this, about bridging literacy and what it can do for you and your students, I highly recommend that you go and check out the community. I would love for you to join the community today and be able to start gaining access to other resources and some of the videos that are there for you. And for those of you who are Bridging Literacy members, you should have received an email regarding another live.
It's in the forum, but I haven't sent an email yet.
So we have it's in the forum, but I am going to be doing a private Q&A for just my Bridging Literacy members. Information is in the community, so you can gain access to that, and that's going to be coming pretty soon. So, all right. What other questions do you guys have for me?
And people can grab the cheat sheet.
Grab the cheat sheets.
And
I should have had that
Tuesday
out. Man, I'm really...
7 p.m. for the chat.
Tuesday at 7 p.m.
And it's going to be...
June 2nd?
June 2nd.
June 2nd. Check the forum. Okay. So, I feel like I've talked a lot. My voice hurts. I hope you guys are doing well. I mean, tell me something good in the chat. Like, let's leave this on a really good, positive note, although I felt like this was pretty positive, that you got all this stuff. But tell me, like, one really good thing that's happened for you in the last week. One good thing that's happened for you in the last week.
Is your Bridging Literacy program for younger grades like 1st and 2nd?
I'm working on it. But yes, it is. It absolutely is. Because if you think about where kids are, where they read, that's exactly where they should be writing. When students start to enter into kindergarten and they're just learning how to read, they read with, I see a cat, I see a dog, I see a bird. Well, how are they going to write? I see a star, I see a fish, I see I see red or something. But they're supposed to write exactly how they read. The problem is that we lose track of that because we teach it separately, that as they start to go higher into the grade level, it starts to split. And so that's the problem with where they are in the upper grades, is that they're so disconnected from what they've been doing in reading and how that should start to help them in their writing. So.
Do you talk with your SS about conferencing and what it looks like before you start? What's SS?
Students.
Oh.
Trent's not cool with the lingo.
Oh.
I would say I don't typically, I kind of tell them that I'm going to sit down and talk with them. I don't necessarily like model that for them because again, I'm starting with the what interests you. I just want to kind of get them comfortable. And so, and I also said that they take a lot longer, and it's because I want to have that conversation individually versus as an entire group. So when I sit down, I'm gonna say, hey, listen, I'm just gonna kind of listen to you read. It's not a big deal. I don't want you to be stressed out. You're not in trouble. It's like everything's fine. I just like to kind of, hear you and see what you're doing as a student. So I try to make it pretty low key and not too, I don't try to go above and beyond with it. Oh, Leslie, congratulations on your daughter finishing high school. That's fun. All right, guys. So.
This is good. I like the new setup.
You like it?
I do like the new setup.
Do you guys like it?
I think so. I think you sat to the one side too much.
Slide. Did you guys notice that I have my little pot? I made this. I made that pot. It's super cute, right? I was very proud of myself. And I know that this isn't like true green, but the plant's green, and then this is orange. Bridging literacy. Woo! Okay. I think I'm going to go ahead and end it here, guys. All right, guys. So I'm going to go ahead and end it here. Thank you so much for joining in on this live chat. I hope that you've gotten the resources as far as the conferring with learners, because it will end. When are you going to stop that?
About 5 minutes.
Okay. So he's going to do it in 5 minutes. You will not be able to use the code in about 5 minutes. So I hope that you have enjoyed this. Thank you guys so much for joining. It's so nice to kind of like talk with you guys. I missed you. So I will be back next Sunday for another live chat, and that's going to be part 8. Part 8. So exciting. We're getting close to being at the very, very end. All right, guys, thank you so much, and I will see you all next time. Bye.